Hey, good afternoon, everybody. We've got Kit Klarenberg back with us, and we're going to be discussing our friends being in court today. This is what we've been waiting for, a development in this story. And I'm going to read the news that's brought today, and then Kit will come in. Huge thank you for everybody who clicked on Kit's links last time. They are all in the description box if you want to support his important work. Like we said last time, not many people are talking about this story. It does seem to have a media blackout that you're only allowed to say so much. So the major headline today is that the trial date has been set for men charged over fires at properties linked to Keir Starmer. And Ukrainian national Roman, 21, appeared at the Old Bailey today alongside, they're calling him a Romanian national, Stanislav, and Ukrainian national Petro. Petro refused to attend the court hearing.
Yeah. No, that's a very interesting feature. He refused to leave his cell.
Wow, that's very interesting, isn't it? I mean, how would you interpret that? I mean, I was incarcerated myself, and it was very rare you would see someone refuse to go to court. The guards, if it was a serious case, a high-profile case like this, the guards would just come in and drag you out the cell, put you in belly chains, handcuffs, leg ankles, and you'd have no choice. They'd walk you in there like a dog if they wanted to. But that was in the States. Perhaps the laws are a bit more lenient here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe he enjoys the showers in prison, particularly. But I think what's really weird about this, and I think that viewers should really bear this in mind, is that as we discussed last time we spoke, Shaun, while the Britain's counter-terrorism director, SO15, is overseeing this case, there are suggestions in the media that there was an international element to this, where the three Ukrainians were part of a conspiracy with people unknown in service of an unknown objective. They've not been charged with terror offences. They've just been charged with arson. Which is, a kind of relatively, even though the crime is very serious, like it's a relatively low-level offence in the scheme of things, given the sweeping breadth of British law. Despite this, it's been reported that they are being remanded in custody until their provisional trial date, which is April 2026. So they're being kept in prison for about a year, which is an insane amount of time for people who, if there was persuasive evidence that they are guilty of these crimes and like a conviction could be easily secured, they would now be being prosecuted. That's not happening. They are being kept, remanded, concealed from public view for the best part of a year. Now, that raises a lot of very obvious questions. Is the purpose to kind of kick the can down the road on this, so when they do come to trial, people are focused on something else, and they've kind of forgotten about this bizarre spate of arson attacks, very specifically targeting Keir Starmer? Are they being deliberately kept quiet, as it were? But to complicate matters further, that since we last spoke, there was a fourth individual, a 48-year-old man, who was arrested trying to do a runner at Stansted Airport, and he was arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to commit arson with the intent to endanger life in connection with these arson attacks. But he's been released on bail until July. And also his nationality has not been disclosed. Now, I have speculated, and this is just speculation, was he their pimp? What might he have been their handler? Or what is his connection to this? Because we don't know, and the media is saying nothing about it. which is very, very, very weird. And it's a point that I repeatedly stressed during our last conversation, and I'll repeat it now. There is a strange, almost oxymoronical disparity between, on the one hand, the media in a concerted lockstep effort, all the British media, I mean, they all on the same day published articles blaming Russia, or even via insinuation, for potentially having orchestrated these attacks on the basis of no evidence whatsoever. And these same outlets which headlined the claim that Russia was behind this wave of arson attacks were also very quick to say this is just one of many avenues being explored by police. No stone is being unturned and nothing is being ruled out, which is to say there's no evidence whatsoever that this theory the police are operating on has any legs. But by the same token, despite that concerted media blitz, the usual suspects are completely silent on this. You might expect a counter-disinformation expert or prominent Russophobe or defense expert, very much encased in vast inverted commas there, a Ukrainian ultra, someone like Paul Mason, who we know gets his briefings from British intelligence on what to say, and is a kind of OG STARMER'S stan, silent on this. Now, that's a very, very strange divergence. And it strongly suggests to me that this story is being very carefully stage managed. Now, we may well have gone into this in the last week's show, but it does bear repeating for new viewers or people who just might have simply forgotten. Britain operates something known as the DSMA Committee. Now, this is the Defence and Security Media Advisory Committee, and it is a Ministry of Defence run body. Its staff is comprised of military veterans, spooks, MI5, MI6 officials serving, and they coordinate with quote unquote journalists and editors at major news outlets to dictate to them how matters of national security, which is a very broad term and it can mean almost anything they want it to be, that is British authorities, they coordinate on what can be reported on and how in the field of national security. It would be entirely unsurprising to me if very clear orders have been given both to institutions and individual journalists how they can report on this and what they can report on. That would account for the strange disparity between headline claims, which I now see that the CIA-funded Radio Free Europe is pushing, about how these Ukrainians might have been acting on Russian orders, and the total silence of people who blame Russia for everything, including bad weather. It's all very, very, very odd. And it does appear that it's going to be the best part of a year before we get any further details on this at the earliest. I mean, does anyone else smell cover up? I don't know. That's for viewers to decide.
Yeah, before I continue the article, then let me just interject a few things there, because you've made some thoughts arise. So I think earlier on in our coverage, when they said that it was a conspiracy, we anticipated that there would be an elderly, a more older person arrested than these lads. And we were hypothesizing as to whether the mugshot of this person would be released and it would look something like this. We are still waiting with bated breath as to the identity of this fourth person. Now, fascinating, because you touched on something that resonates with my own experience. What I know is if you're a foreign national, then it's much harder to get released on bail. I was arrested in America, my ecstasy case. The prosecutor was really laying it on thick. I'm a British person. I could flee the country. My initial bail was set $750,000 cash only. When I asked for a reduction, the judge doubled it to 1.5 million.
Wow.
Which moved me over to maximum security. So if you're a foreign national, you're a flight risk, and that does qualify you for a very high bail or no bail. Also, you qualify for very high bail or no bail, depending upon the seriousness of your offence. Now, you've got two of these individuals were arrested at airports trying to flee the country. Now, if the flight risk factor was the overriding factor, why would they have released on bail the fourth person who was arrested at an airport trying to flee the country, which only leaves then the reason you cited for keeping them enclosed for that period of time, which is a cover-up.
Yeah. No, exactly. And you got to bear in mind that, like, one of the reasons that Julian Assange was kept in Belmarsh for 5 very long years was because he was considered a flight risk. Now, someone trying to do a runner to where we don't know via Stansted Airport is by definition a flight risk. There's no indication that their passport, whatever passport that is, has been taken from them, or there have been any efforts to restrict their travel. We don't know who this person is, but he's, the best part of twice the age of the 3 Ukrainians who've been arrested. So that's very, very, very odd. Yes, I mean, as I say, I mean, the British justice system is not necessarily known for celerity, but if you look at how quickly when the British state and when British authorities want to really crack down on people, they do so brutally and rapidly. Like, if you look at people who got sent to prison for extended periods for their involvement in the London riots because they stole a bottle of water from a ransacked store. This is going back to 2011 now. Versus these people who, in a very targeted and very deliberate way, set fire to a car, which we'll get on to, and 2 properties linked to Keir Starmer. You would think if there was persuasive evidence they'd done this, that they would be in court the next week and facing charges. No, they're being kept away. And I'd also, yes, it's very, very, very odd that that one of them refused to appear in court and preferred to stay in jail. Very, very, very strange. I might add as well that, I mentioned that Radio Free Europe, the CIA propaganda platform, they published all of yesterday, amazingly, that they claim to have cracked the case because somehow the investigative wing of Radio Free Europe, called Schemes, which I didn't even know existed, they found that Lavronovich, one of the suspects, who has been living in Britain, quote unquote, for an undetermined amount of time, was a member of several Telegram groups targeting Russian and Ukrainian speakers looking for work. And he left his last message in one of these groups on May 3rd, 5 days before Starmer's car was set ablaze. And he said, "I'm looking for a job. I can be a handyman or a foreman's assistant." And the day before, another message he posted in a separate job search group, where he was also expressed his kind of desperation for employment and said he'd consider any options. A user named Yuri replied, "Write to me in a private chat." Radio Free Europe acknowledges it's unclear if Lavronovich responded, and Yuri was contacted by Radio Free Europe, and he said that Lavronovich never responded. But this is sufficient again to blame Russia. This report has gotten some secondary pickup in pro-Ukraine, pro-regime media in Kiev, such as the Kiev Independent, which is, of course, not independent. It's entirely funded by Western powers. But that seems to be the narrative that is being pushed now. The Ukrainian intelligence services issued a statement warning that Russian spooks were trying to recruit Ukrainian citizens in order to involve them in illegal activities. You might think that they would have been first out of up the gate making these allegations, but it's taken them until June, several weeks after the first arrests were made in this case, for them to make that charge.
All right, so I've just researched this about refusing to go to court from a UK prison cell, and it looks like there's serious consequences. It says here, if you're in prison in the UK, you cannot refuse to attend court for your sentencing or hearing. The court can issue an order for your presence, and refusing to comply can lead to further penalties, including additional prison time. So refusing, ignoring the order, consequences, you've got an extra 2 years in prison for certain offences. While the court may consider reasonable grounds for refusing to attend, such as illness, they will make a determination about whether you should be present. If the court deems your presence necessary, they can instruct the prison to ensure you attend, and that will be by force, like I've seen it in America. Refusing a court order to attend can also be considered contempt of court, leading to further legal action. So it's quite a serious thing. This person must be aware there's going to be consequences to not show his face in court. So what would possibly motivate him to want to risk those consequences? I'm wondering.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, this is all very, very, very murky. And we don't even know how to, we don't even know that how their personal connections planned out. But I mean, one thing that I find very, very interesting about this is there is quite clearly an attempt to create a narrative in the media that the arsonists were kind of just like bumbling freelancers, and that actually they were. I mean, the implication being that they could easily be led, or I mean, I think I've even seen some references to, as we discussed, Zoolander. The Ben Stiller film where models are manipulated into serving as terrorists. Now, there was a Daily Telegraph report which stated that it was a few days ago, which referred to how Karpiach, which is that he's born in Ukraine, although frequently referred to as Romanian. He has lived all over London and allegedly lived with his parents and his girlfriend. Neighbours in a very common manner refer to them as very nice and very quiet. As most serial killers are described by their neighbours. But even more interestingly, there was as I mentioned, there was a Telegraph report which stated that Karpiach, his hairdresser, allegedly interviewed by the Daily Telegraph, said he was Ukrainian and could barely speak English. Now, this is someone who's lived in the UK for 9 years, and during that time got a university diploma from Canterbury Christchurch. Now, as someone who lived in the UK and Londoner born and bred of 30 years standing, I can say with some confidence that if you can't speak English, you're not going to get very far in the UK personally, professionally, or socially, particularly if you live there for 9 years. So that doesn't make any sense. And actually, I think someone who caught our past show reached out to me and showed me a clip I'd not seen before on Facebook of Karpiach speaking pretty good English in an interview. Yeah, I mean, this is a total lie. And I might add that the Telegraph states that Karpiach, despite his apparent lack of English capabilities, could speak very good Russian, which again seems like a desperate attempt to link this to Russia on the basis of nothing.
Yeah, you'll have to send me that clip of him speaking. I'll be fascinated. So I'll continue this news headline then. For viewers who've just joined us, we've had these guys in court today. Well, at least two of them. One of them refused, but the fourth is out on bail. And the article here says that Klarenberg of Lewisham has been charged with 3 counts of arson with intent to endanger life on 8th, 11th, and 12th of May. Karpiuk from Romford, East London, and Petro of Islington, North London, are each accused of 1 count of conspiracy to commit arson with intent to endanger life between 17th of April and 13th of May. 2 of them appeared at the hearing via video link today from HMP Belmarsh. They only spoke to confirm their identities and dates of birth through an interpreter. And there's actually there's actually an artist's impression of one of them. I'll show you.